Streaming from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is OSU Football Update with Jeremie Poplin.
OSU Football Update time. Thank you for tuning in here on the digital desk, and we welcome you into the start of football season. Ready or not, it is here. And we've got a depth chart to discuss for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Even though Mike Gundy had his press conference last Thursday, we are inching closer to the start of the college football season for the Pokes as they get underway on Thursday. And without further ado, let's kick this off by welcoming in, well, someone, a familiar face for Oklahoma State fans. John Holcomb joins us from News on 6. Holcomb, man, we're ready to go. Whether anyone is ready or not, it's going to be here coming up on Thursday. And right off the bat, when we start talking about depth charts, the only thing that I can see here is if you're a minor, there's a lot of oars. See, that was my minor joke that I was able to work in here off the top. But my goodness, man, this is just kind of, I think, the going and the current state of college athletics on the football side with so many new faces. This is nothing new on your end. This has been done for multiple years in a row now from Gundy's perspective with the oars listed next to potential starters.
That's very true. And again, I mean, I guess the headline of all of this, when you get to specific position groups, is still quarterback. This is not a surprise, though, that Zane Flores or Hoss Haney, that's the way it's listed there. And I'm not sure that we'll know, but I would hope that Dave Hunziker and Robert Allen that I do the games with on radio, I would hope that we would know to where we're sitting on it during pregame until a specific time when we cut it loose. And typically that's the way those things will go. Although there was a famous time, Pop, when Wes Lunt, the freshman quarterback, was going to get the start against TCU. We knew about it all week. Joe Shad from ESPN got in there and ended up breaking the story on ESPN radio the morning of the game. And so then I had to share that news because I heard it in the car on my way to Stillwater, and I shared that news with Dave and Robert. And this is turning into a long story. I didn't mean for it to, but I think you know the punchline of all of it because it upset some of us that we weren't the ones breaking the news.
Yes.
And it led to a pretty funny exchange that people are going to have to ask me personally for that story. I'm not going to share it. So
I've been there, done that a few times with a head coach from the University of Tulsa, that even though we pre-recorded an interview that was going to air the moment that they ran out of the tunnel and got set for kickoff, he still wouldn't tell me who the starting quarterback was going to be, even if it was pre-recorded and going to air on the network broadcast right before. So I feel your pain for sure.
My guess was we'll play 27 guys in the game that have never played for Oklahoma State. We're very physical in camp. We actually backed off a little bit earlier than normal because I felt like that we were in a position that we should be. Every year it's different based on who you are and who your players are and what their maturity is and so on and so forth. I was able to get a pretty good feel for our football team over the first 2 weeks, maybe the first 12 practices or so. And then we do have a considerable number of players that will be playing for us that are veteran players. They're just not veterans here at Oklahoma State. And so my history is when I see that and I see a guy that I'm pretty sure is going to be able to compete on a physical level, then I have to be a little bit careful about how much we do it preseason. Because whether you like it or not, in my opinion, you have to think about where you're going to be in October. Because it's not right now. It's preparing for avoiding fatigue in October and November, which is what happens if you front load them, in our opinion.
Let's jump to a few spots that we know that are locked in. And there's a handful of those, correct, on the depth chart that do not have the or listed next to them. How about 2 tight ends, John? My goodness, we're moving up in the world as far as having 2 tight ends locked in for this early portion of the depth chart.
yeah, I'm not sure we're going to go into 14 personnel because I don't know if you have enough offensive linemen on the field. It's not going to be a legal snap. But yeah, I think what they did with the tight ends is characterize them or kind of put them in one of them's, you know, your more physical, more like an extra offensive lineman trying to help block on the edge. And then you've got more of maybe an H back, even though they're not calling it that, or the cowboy back, they're not calling it that anymore. guys who may be more adept at going out and catching passes and maybe not quite the blockers that the other guys are. That's not to say that you won't have two tight ends lining up in a lot of cases, especially if you feel the need to run the football. Then get another hat out there and try to force your opponent to load things up, and then figure out how strong you are being able to put extra guys up there and block. But I do like Josh Ford, who is the Stillwater kid who played some last year, had a touchdown catch in the Tulsa game. Josh is that typical country boy, tough as nails, physical, and can catch it as well. But they also like what they get from Oscar Hammond too. So it's kind of a nice little mix they've got going at tight end.
Offensive line, not quite all the way complete, still a few pieces. And I talked about this with Toby yesterday when we were going over the Sooners depth chart. And it's always a work in progress, right? Through the first couple of weeks of the season, trying to figure things out. Left side seems to be pretty much intact, and that is featured, or at least the starting spots are there by a couple of transfer players. But at least you feel like that you've got a significant portion of that in place.
Yes, 4 of the 5, at least 4 of the 5 starting spots. The only one that's got an or as far as the starters go is at center, which is Kason Carpenter, who was at Tulsa last year, and then Austin Kowecki, who has been there with Cowboys, played a variety of positions on that offensive line. But you mentioned the transfers, and it's interesting because you get Markel Samuel, who's going to have to anchor that line from that left tackle spot, and Bob Schick, and you've got guys with a lot of experience, but you've also got guys that, at least in one of those cases, you picked them up late in the portal. And you used to be, Bob, and we talked with Coach Meacham about this, it used to be that if you were having to pick guys up late in the portal, it wasn't such a good thing. Like, you were trying to strike early while the iron's hot. But now, with the way this has evolved, it's not necessarily a bad thing to pick up guys later in the cycle. And, so they come in, haven't played it down for OSU yet, but are going to, get the bulk of the action, especially on that left side.
As we stick with the offense, wide receiver spot, anything jump out to you there?
Terrell Davis, the UCO transfer, he's listed as an or in terms of the starting spot with Dwayne Lofton, who transferred in from Virginia Tech and missed most of last year with that wrist injury. Now he's healthy, but Davis had such a good camp for the Cowboys, and showing an ability to make tough catches too. That that's an impressive deal for him to come in. But he's had a lot of balls thrown his way, and so there's a comfort level there, even though he's stepping up in level of competition. You've got the other slot, Sam Jackson, the 5th, and Gavin Freeman. And those guys are not just other slot guys with experience, but they're also your returners in terms of Sam Jackson listed as one of the kick returners, Freeman, one of the punt returners, or, the starting punt returners. So guys with a lot of speed and shiftiness that you've got at that position. I think the biggest question mark in terms of receivers, which is why you see, I should say this too, that behind Jackson and Freeman is Royal Capel, a freshman from Texas that they love. And he's one of those freshmen that Mike Gundy talked about that should see some playing time. And, you get on that other side, and you've got other guys sitting behind them. Shamar Rigby, the transfer in from Purdue, who may be the best receiver in terms of having to catch passes in great coverage. He's had a very impressive camp. And the question marks, if there are any, may come on the outside, where you have guys with more size and maybe more athleticism, but the camp hasn't been for them what it was for the inside receivers. And what does that mean when you start playing games? Have no idea.
No.
The general answer when people ask, what do you think is going to happen this season, to a great degree, have no idea, but especially at that outside receiver spot.
What does this tell us about Shetron's injury? I know that happened, in the spring, right, John? And
yeah.
You know how Gundy is with injuries and trying to protect internally. I don't know if we've heard anything, but, he's absent on this list, so that would tell me that this is either a process that we're going to have to continue to wait a little bit longer, or is it worse than what we initially thought?
Well, as far as I can tell, he's not healthy right now, and there was no sense putting him on a depth chart right now. It's not any sort of a disciplinary thing. I think it's just a matter of being physically able to play. I think when he gets back, then yes, he definitely would be back in the mix once he's healthy. But unfortunately for him, it's been something that has been a recurring problem. He had the shoulder separation in the game at West Virginia in his career. He just has had these issues trying to stay healthy, and hopefully for his sake, he can come back because he's another guy with a lot of speed and athleticism that would push and maybe get more out of these other outside receivers than maybe what they're seeing right now.
Let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball. What stands out to you? Any missing names or ones that are a little bit of a surprise in a couple of their positions?
From all of the hype that you want to talk about missing, and we talked about this a lot, Colin Oliver and Nick Martin, especially Nick Martin with your beloved 49ers doing
right.
what he's doing.
Killing it.
Yeah, and the linebackers, the number of linebackers that you lost from last year, which were really the core of what made your defense good, and you saw the production slip on that side of the ball when they were both out. The guys they brought in and how Todd Grantham, the DC, feels about them. I think they could be a very nice surprise. I'm not saying that they're on Nick Martin's level, but when you've got guys listed at that outside linebacker spot, Wendell Gregory, Malik Charles, and Taj McCoy, of course, McCoy, an Oklahoma City kid who played for Deion Sanders in Colorado. But Charles, with that size, 6'3", 280, and then Gregory, they love what they have there, and it's guys who can cover in small spaces in the pass game, but who can really do some damage. Is what Grantham's hoping, coming off the edge or helping being those run stoppers that you need there. I think to see that those three guys are listed as a starter tells you a lot about the shared athleticism that they have.
Kenneth Harris, Landon Cleveland, kind of that nickel spot, which they call it the star, that's there. More transfers, John. Broken record when we start talking about the portal, and we'll get to overall perspective here in a moment. But what's kind of been the word about those two?
Well, Harris, and I'll tip the cap to Robert Allen, our sideline reporter, also has does a lot of work involving OSU. Robert's been singing the praises of Kenneth Harris now for quite a while, and felt like that he should have been playing for OSU more than he did. He really hadn't played much at all, but he had a really good camp. Showed great cover skills. I can't give away a lot of what I saw in the scrimmage because we're sworn to secrecy, but I can tell you he made an impression covering guys, especially across the middle of the field. Grantham's very happy with him, and just overall, from talking to the defensive coordinator, the way he described these guys, he basically told us, he said, they've all got a story about how they ended up here, right? But he loves the story because these are guys that are eager to prove in a lot of cases that they are worth more playing time, or they can play at this level. And I just kind of threw it to him. I said, that sounds like a group that a coach would really want to coach. And he says, I love coaching these guys. So I don't think there's going to be any buy-in problems. I know we had the thing with Patterson from Miami earlier, and Mike Gundy has said, out of 102 guys on the roster now, 99 are fully bought in. I think Grantham's got a bunch of guys who are fully bought in.
Big picture-wise, how do you view 19 oars listed? Because instantly social media wants to go the negative route, and I know you're super shocked about that.
Yeah.
I tend to look at this and just have to rely off of what we've learned from the coaching staff, what we've learned from Kenyatta and the hard work that he's done from the general manager's role. They hit the transfer portal incredibly hard this year, and for the most part, we're able to pick up some really good players out of the portal. So I don't always want to lean towards the negative side maybe I want to stay somewhere in the middle, because what if this is just actually, we did a really good job of landing these guys out of the portal, and the competitions are so great right now, we feel comfortable with multiple options. Am I crazy to think that way?
You're being way too positive for social media. Come on.
Guilty.
Here's the thing though too. If you're just going to jump to that conclusion, then you're forgetting one of the fundamental things that a lot of coaches and programs love to do before the season starts, is maybe throw opponents off the scent. This gives your opponent something else to think about. Now you can say, all right, defensively, a lot of teams like UT Martin, they may not care who's going to line up because they know they have to do what they have to do, right? I think that this fuels the whole. If there's been one big word coming into this season that covers Oklahoma State, it's uncertainty, because of the way last season went down and because of all the new faces. So, I mean, why not have a bunch of oars? Most of these guys that you're going to put on the field have not played a snap for Oklahoma State. So how can you be, unless a guy has just completely won the position in camp without a shadow of a doubt, then why not put an oar out there? Plus, it keeps all those guys engaged, going, okay, yeah, I know, I'm going to continue to fight for more snaps and more. And if you're talking defense too, I get the sense that it's not as important who's going to start. I mean, okay, you got to have Iman Oates there on that defensive line. You've got Jaleel Johnson and Deshaun Brown, two guys who've been in the program for a while, that right now have one of the defensive end spots locked up. But if the goal is to stay fresh with a lot of guys, and let's talk about this. OSU has more depth on the defensive line maybe they've ever had. Quality depth, that is. Secondary, you could roll 7-8 guys through. That's a luxury they haven't had in a lot of cases. And then you've got all this linebacker talent. If the goal is to stay fresh and make sure that you're fresh and fast and physical in the fourth quarter, it shouldn't be a shock at all that you've got as many oars on the depth chart as you do.
By the way, sorry for being positive. I feel like I have to just preface that by saying that, especially in today's
double secret
day and
probation
age.
for you.
Double secret probation. Final one. I asked Toby this question. I'll ask you. The group that you're most excited to see on Thursday night.
I'll go right back to, I would say kind of the running backs, because you've got 5 listed as or there.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see Caleb Hicks, the transfer from OU, and see how he looks in game situation. Obviously Rodney Fields is there, but Hicks is the one that intrigues me a little bit. But I'll go back to the linebackers. I just think that that's a group that has some versatility to it. And based on the scheme that Grantham has brought in, there's a lot of pressure on those guys to make sure that when they attack, they're attacking the right lanes. They're not busting assignments, because they kind of quarterback the whole defense to begin with. I'm really interested to see what we get from Brian McCoy, the transfer from Akron, who's just been a vocal leader. I'm interested again in Charles and Gregory and Taj McCoy on that outside. Boy, we're going to have to differentiate whenever there's a McCoy making a tackle from the linebacker spot. It's going to have to be, I'm not one of these guys that's big into calling guys by their first names on broadcast, but it may have to happen with those two.
Well, rest in peace to Dave Hunziker's spotter boards with all of the 19 different combinations that are happening. I'm not envious at all of guys like Dave who have to go through this. The spotter's going to be put in an extra compromising position this weekend as well to make sure that everyone's on the exact same page. But hey, just a few short hours away, John, and the season will officially be underway. Thank you so much for joining us, man, and giving us a little rundown of the depth chart, and we'll see you again soon right here on the digital desk.
Sounds good, Pop, and we've got a spotter ready to handle that. Eddie Neuendorf's one of the best.
Absolutely. That's where he's going to be earning that paycheck for the upcoming game this Thursday night. That'll do it for us. Thank you for tuning in. Our very first edition of an Oklahoma State version here from the digital studio. Remember to hit and like that video, like and subscribe button. I screwed that up at the end, but you know what I mean. Smash that like button, subscribe, do all the things that you know to do, and we'll see you next time here from the digital desk, courtesy of Griffin Media.
Thank you for watching this Oklahoma's own digital studio sports presentation. Stay with News on 6, online and on television anytime for the latest news, weather, and sports.